Hi, everybody. So, I have been so looking forward to reading this next chapter. As you may remember, chapter 22 is called Caught. I wonder if Cass is the one that's been caught. Cass opened her eyes with a jolt. She was still on the massage table, but uncertain how much time had passed. What happened? Had she been hypnotised? What did she say to Dr. L? Had she told him who she was? Alarmed, she pushed herself up and looked around. She seemed to be alone. No, there was Owen, entering the room. How did he always know? He greeted her as though nothing were different. She must not have given herself away after all. Cass was so relieved she almost laughed out loud. By now she had seen most of the spa, with one notable exception. After Cass had dressed, she asked Owen what was inside the pyramid. Nothing, he answered quickly. Just a lot of rocks. I wouldn't go in there. She shrugged agreeably, but of course his answer had only increased her curiosity, and this time she vowed she wouldn't be so easily derailed. Yawning, she told Owen that she was tired after all her treatments, which was true, and that she needed to rest, which was also true. She said she could find her way back to her room without him. True, too. Why didn't he take a break now and check on her later? She was going to go take a short nap. False. I don't know. I'm not really supposed to. You're my butler, right? Aren't you supposed to do whatever I say? He nodded. Well then, I'm ordering you to go relax. But if I go relax, I won't be around to follow your orders, will I? Cass looked at him to see if he was serious. He smiled. They both laughed, and suddenly Cass felt she not only had a butler, she had a friend. It was on the tip of her tongue to tell Owen why she was at the spa. Did he know about Dr. L and Miss Morvay, she wondered. Could he possibly be as evil as they? She didn't think so, but she decided it was better not to risk asking anything. The way back to her room was through the hot pools, so Cass went in that direction, in case Owen was watching. She figured she'd change course as soon as she was hidden by the steam. Just as she was about to veer off towards the pyramid, she heard a loud sigh and nearly slipped on the wet stone floor. She peered down at the pool in front of her. A woman was floating on her back, round her pink face bobbing in and out of the bubbling water as she was simmering in a giant pot of soup. It was Gloria Fortune, estate agent for the dead. What was she doing here? Earlier, Cass had feared Gloria might have joined her clients in the afterlife, but under the circumstances, stumbling upon her alive was almost more alarming than stumbling upon a corpse. If Gloria recognised her, it would all be over. Luckily, Gloria's eyes were closed. Cass backed away as quickly and quietly as she could. There was no time to lose. At any moment, Gloria might pop up again, this time with her eyes open, and identify Cass. She had to find Benjamin and get out of the spa right away. The night before, the lamp on the top of the pyramid had shone so brightly that it could have been daytime. Now, late in the afternoon, the lamp was dim, its flame a bare flicker, and the spa was in shadows, so dark it could have been evening. It was as if the spa existed in its own alternative time zone, in defiance of the laws of the physical universe. The shadows allowed Cass to cross the open courtyard in relative safety, but when she reached the reflecting pool that surrounded the pyramid, she had to step out into the open. The reflecting pool, she now realised, was no pool at all. It was a moat, and the drawbridge, it was standing upright, blocking the entrance to the pyramid. Her only hope of getting inside was to find an underground passage. Where would the passage let out? Cass wondered, if there was one. From the back of the pyramid she traced an imaginary line to the nearest building, and she marked the spot most likely to hide an entrance to the underground. As it turned out, the building was one of the few Cass had not yet entered. Like the others, it was designed very simply around a single central corridor that stretched from one end to the other. But here the atmosphere was subtly more luxurious. A long, narrow, richly embroidered rug, such as you might find in a throne room, lay atop the stone floor. Intimidating to step on, it nonetheless allowed Cass to walk the length of the corridor in silence. She must have passed a dozen doors, all closed, and all painted a deep royal blue, before she saw the one she wanted. In contrast to the other doors, it was covered in gleaming gold leaf, and had been left ever so slightly ajar. She put her ear against the door, but didn't hear anything. Dare she? She had to. It was her only chance. Cass cracked the door open, then stepped back in fright. The room behind the door was occupied by hundreds of people. Or was it? She looked again. The room was empty, save for hundreds of reflections of herself. Nervously, she entered. Mirrored panels covered all the walls as well as the ceiling, creating the illusion of an infinitely expanding space. Even the marble floor had been polished to a reflective sheen. A giant octopus-like chandelier, Cass's grandfathers would have identified it as Venetian glass, hung from the ceiling and was reflected in the many mirrors, so that it seemed to be replicating in all directions. A long blackless couch, upholstered in gold and silk. Cass's grandfathers would have called it a daybed and noted that it was in a Napoleonic style, and a small desk plated in silver completed the picture. Cass immediately recognised the room for what it was: the private office of Miss Morvay. Cold but deceptively glamorous, like the woman herself. One could easily have imagined her sitting for hours on the daybed, gazing at herself in one mirror after the next, after the next, after the next. Our young heroine, however, had no time for lingering. She tiptoed across the marble, examining it for telltale cracks or seams. She thought there might be a hatch door in the floor, until she found herself butting up against one of the mirrored panels, startled once more by her own reflection. Multiplied over and over, her ears seemed to grow larger and larger. "Are you looking for me, Miss Skelton?" A familiar chill descended on Cass as Miss Morvay's reflection made that reflections appeared beside her. She was caught. What should she do? What could she do? Slowly, Cass turned around. She half hoped she wouldn't find anyone, that the blonde Barbie-esque woman in the mirror was nothing but a mirage, but she was all too real, and as fake as ever. "I'm Miss Morvay. Forgive me for not introducing myself earlier. I trust the midnight sun is everything you hoped." Cass grimaced involuntarily, her heart thumping. She told herself to say something, say anything, but nothing came out. "You know, I couldn't help noticing the way you were looking at yourself a moment ago," continued her hostess. "Of course, we do offer makeovers, but we thought you were more of the natural type. Here, let me see." She lifted Cass's head with a gloved hand and examined her young guest from all sides. "If you like, we can do something about it." "About what?" Cass asked, finally finding her voice. "About your ears. We can fix them." "My ears?" Perhaps Cass thought if they talked about her ears, Miss Morvay wouldn't question again why she was in her office. "Yes, I thought they were bothering you. They do rather stick out." "What do you mean? How would you fix them?" Cass tried gently to pull her head away, but Miss Morvay wouldn't let go. Among his many talents, Dr. Hell is a very gifted plastic surgeon. "You mean you would operate on them?" Cass exclaimed in obvious horror, remembering too late that Skelton's sister might have a different reaction to the prospect of plastic surgery. "There's only so much makeup can do," observed Miss Morvay, at last realising Cass's head from her hands. "Don't worry, he has a very light touch. He never leaves any scars. He's an artist. Here, what do you think of mine?" She gathered up her blonde hair and tilted her neck, exposing her ears for Cass to inspect. Every year he works on them. They're like a sculpture that's never quite finished. He says he won't be done until I have the most exquisite ears in the world." The way she said this, Cass could tell Miss Morvay thought her ears were already something special. In truth, Cass couldn't remember ever seeing any more perfect. "Just think what you could do with a beautiful girl like you." Should she have her ears worked on? Cass had never even considered it. But the idea of not being teased any more was very appealing, and Miss Morvay made it sound so easy. "Your mother doesn't have ears like yours, does she? Would you like to look more like her?" "How do you know? You haven't met her, have you?" Cass asked momentarily, unsure whether they were talking about the Skeleton Sisters' mother or her own. No, of course not, Miss Marvell laughed. I just thought, well, she got married, didn't she? And what man would marry a woman with ears like yours? Suddenly, Cass could feel herself burning with shame and anger and a deep sort of hatred. She was certain her ears had never been so red, but Miss Marvell appeared not to notice. Well, you don't have to side now. Come. She grasped Cass by the arm, making it impossible for her to even think about looking for Benjamin. It's almost time for dinner, and we have a surprise guest this evening. And as you can probably guess, the next chapter is called A Surprise Guest.